The accident happened on a Tuesday evening, just after 7 o'clock, when the rain was falling so hard that the headlights of Gaius Martins' black Mercedes looked like two drowning stars. A truck had skidded across the highway divider on the outskirts of Wilmington, clipping the front of his car and sending it spinning into the guardrail. When the paramedics arrived, they found him slumped over the steering wheel, breathing but unresponsive. They strapped him to a gurney, called it a possible traumatic brain injury, and rushed him to Los Angeles Medical Center with sirens screaming into the wet night. What the paramedics didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Gaius Martins had woken up approximately 40 seconds after the crash. He had lain there in the wreckage, staring at the cracked windshield, feeling the blood trickle from a cut above his eyebrow, and made a decision that would change the rest of his life. He closed his eyes. He slowed his breathing. He became still. It wasn't cowardice that made him do it. It wasn't the shock either, though his hands were trembling. It was something that had been building in him for years, a quiet, terrible suspicion about the people who surrounded him. His siblings. His business partners. The people who smiled at his dinner table and called him every birthday without fail. He needed to know the truth about them, and for a man worth $63 million, a hospital bed was the perfect confessional. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. Gaius was the second of 4 children born to Emmanuel Martins, a self-made man from downtown of Los Angeles who had built a modest shipping empire in the United States over 30 years. When Emmanuel died 6 years earlier, he left everything to Gaius, not because he loved the others less, but because Gaius was the only one who had worked beside him, the only one who understood the business, the only one who had sacrificed his 20s and 30s to the relentless grind of building something real. The will had caused a fracture that never fully healed. His older brother, Desmond, had contested it in court for 2 years before finally giving up. His younger sister, Priya, had stopped speaking to him for 8 months. His youngest brother, Felix, had borrowed money from him 3 separate times and repaid none of it. On the surface, they were a family. At Christmas dinners and birthday calls, they played the role convincingly, but Gaius had always wondered, if everything were stripped away, who were these people, really? Now, lying in a private hospital room in Los Angeles, connected to monitors that beeped softly and steadily, he was about to find out. They arrived the next morning. He heard Desmond before he saw him, that deep, authoritative voice filling the corridor like he already owned the place. The doctor said it's a waiting game. Could be days. Could be weeks. Priya's heels clicked against the tile floor. And his power of attorney? Who has that? A pause. His lawyer does. Thomas Webb. We should call Thomas, Felix said. His voice was flat, practical, stripped of grief. Gaius lay perfectly still. He controlled his breathing the way a diver controls air, measured, deliberate, invisible. Behind his closed eyelids, his heart was hammering. The 3 of them settled into the room. A nurse came in, checked his vitals, said something encouraging about brain activity, and left. For a few minutes, his siblings were quiet. Then, as if the nurse's departure had been a signal, Desmond spoke. The Harrington portfolio alone is worth about $14 million, he said. I had someone look into it last year. You had someone look into it? Priya's voice had a sharp edge, but not of outrage, more like competition. We're not doing anything wrong by being informed. If he doesn't recover. When he doesn't recover, Felix corrected, and the words fell into the room like stones into still water. Nobody corrected him. Gaius felt something cold move through his chest. Not a surprise, exactly. More like confirmation of a wound he'd been pressing on for years, finally checking to see how deep it went. They talked for nearly an hour. About the beach house in the Carolinas. About the apartment buildings in Philadelphia. About the investment accounts, the art collection, the vintage cars in the garage. They divided things with a casualness that was almost elegant, like they were planning a dinner menu rather than dismantling a man's life. Desmond wanted the business holdings. Priya wanted the real estate. Felix, characteristically, wanted cash, liquid assets, quick and clean. At one point, Priya walked to the bedside and looked down at him. He could feel her presence, could sense her leaning close. He thought, for one terrible moment, that she might touch his face. Instead, she said quietly, "You always had to be the favorite, didn't you, Gaius?" And then she stepped away. He had never, in all his years of accumulating wealth and success, felt so completely alone. They left around noon to get lunch and meet with a family lawyer they'd apparently already contacted. Gaius lay in the silence they left behind, staring at the ceiling through the thin veil of his closed eyes, wondering what he was supposed to do with what he'd just heard. The door opened again about 20 minutes later. He braced himself. But the footsteps were different, softer and unhurried. Not the click of expensive shoes but the quiet shuffle of someone who was used to moving through spaces without being noticed. It was Clara. Clara Moore had worked in Gaius's home for 11 years. She was 53 years old, a Mexican woman with close-cropped gray hair and hands that were always slightly red from work. She cooked. She cleaned. She kept his house running with a quiet efficiency that he had always taken for granted. He paid her well, better than the market rate, he'd made sure of that, but he had never really stopped to think about her beyond the role she filled. She pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down. He heard her set something on the side table, a container of food, based on the smell, rice. She had brought him rice to a hospital room. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she said, softly and simply, talking to what she believed was an unconscious man. Mr. Gaius. I don't know if you can hear me. The doctors say maybe you can, so I'm going to talk to you like you can. He stayed still. I want you to know something, Clara continued. Her voice was steady, unhurried, as if she had thought carefully about what she wanted to say before coming here. I have worked in many houses. Rich houses, poor houses, all kinds, and I want to tell you, you were not always easy. Sometimes you forgot my name for days at a time when you were stressed. Sometimes you talked past me like I was part of the furniture. I don't say this to be unkind. I say it because what I'm going to say next, I want you to know it is the truth and not just flattery. Gaius's throat tightened. You are a good man, Clara said. Not because you paid me well, though you did, and I'm grateful, but because 3 years ago, when my son was sick and I told you I needed to go home to Mexico for a month, you told me to go and you paid me for the whole month anyway. You didn't make me beg. You didn't make me feel small. You just said, go, Clara. Be with your boy. My son is alive today, Mr. Gaius. He is 26 years old and he works as an engineer, and last month he got married, and I danced at his wedding. I danced because he was there to get married. She paused. He could hear her composing herself. I heard your brother and sisters talking this morning when they didn't think I was in the hallway. I heard what they were saying about your property and your money. And I want you to know, if you can hear me, wherever you are inside yourself, they are wrong. This is not your end, you are going to wake up, and when you do, you are going to see clearly. Sometimes God lets us fall so that we can see who bends down to help us. She sat quietly for a moment. Then she said, I brought your rice. I'll leave it here. The nurses probably won't let you have it, but it'll be here when you're ready. He heard her stand, heard the chair scrape back, and heard her walk to the door. And that's when Gaius Martins opened his eyes. Clara. She stopped. Turned slowly. When she saw his open eyes, his hand reaching weakly toward her, she pressed both hands to her mouth and stood frozen in the doorway. You're awake, she whispered. I've been awake, he said. His voice was rough, dry. Since the crash. Her eyes widened. She came back to the bedside slowly, like she wasn't sure the floor would hold her. I needed to know, he said simply. He didn't offer more explanation than that. He didn't think he needed to. Clara looked at him for a long time. Then she sat back down, folded her hands in her lap, and said, and now you know. Now I know, he agreed. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, feeling the weight of the morning settling over him, the casual greed of Desmond's voice, Felix's when, Priya's quiet cruelty at the bedside. And then this woman's voice, steady and honest, talking to what she thought was an empty vessel, filling it with something true. Clara, he said. When I leave this hospital, I am going to make some changes. She nodded once. I thought you might. 3 weeks later, Gaius Martins walked out of Los Angeles Medical Center under his own power, with a bandaged head and a revised will. He did not cut his siblings out entirely. He was not a cruel man, and he understood that a family, even broken, greedy, disappointing family, was still family. But the contested beach house went to charity. The Philadelphia properties were placed in a trust managed by Thomas Webb with strict conditions, and a significant portion of his liquid assets was redirected into a foundation he named after his father, focused on funding medical care for families who couldn't afford it. For Clara Moore, he set up an irrevocable trust fund enough to ensure that she and her son and his new wife would never struggle. He didn't make a speech about it. He didn't frame it as charity. He sat down with her at the kitchen table in his house, slid an envelope across to her, and said, "This is owed." She opened it, read the documents inside, and was quiet for a very long time. Then she got up, went back to the stove, and finished making his dinner. And Gaius Martins sat at his kitchen table in the ordinary evening light, watching a woman who had told the truth to an unconscious man, and thought that perhaps he had never been richer than he was right now, not in any way that mattered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even a broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were Gaius. Would you have included your siblings in the will? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? Would love to hear your story.